Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today's story is about a grocery store showdown where a mom delivers a life lesson in the sweetest and most savage way possible. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. The Sweet Taste of Consequences. A grocery store lesson in instant gratification. This happened earlier today at the grocery store. A mom was in line in front of me with her two young daughters. Neither could have been older than 8, buying a random assortment of items, including roughly a gallon of Neapolitan ice cream. Suddenly, one of the girls looks over at a display of candy bars and her eyes light up. "Mommy, Mommy, I want a chocolate bar," she points to the display. Mom looks over and shakes her head. "No, honey, we're already getting ice cream. You don't need a chocolate bar." The girl grabs one of the bars. "But I want this so much more than I want ice cream." She waves the bar in front of her mom's face. She, the daughter, also pushes one into her sister's hands to get her on board. With both of her daughters now waving candy bars in front of her, she suddenly gets the look. "So you want candy bars instead of ice cream, is that it?" The daughters are nodding and emphatically saying, "Yes, yes, we want the candy bars, not the ice cream." So the mom turns to the cashier and says, "Can you please remove the ice cream? They don't want it." Cashier dutifully clears the ice cream from the order and puts the tub next to the register. She tells the mom her total and is handed the money. The mom starts bagging up her groceries while the kids tear open their candy bars and start devouring their treat. Right as the mom finishes putting the bagged groceries in her cart for the trip out to the car, the kids finish their candy bars, look at the empty wrappers, and then at the tub of ice cream sitting next to the register. Realization dawns in their eyes. "Hey, Mom, can we still get the ice cream after all?" Mom has a smirk on her face. "You said you didn't want the ice cream. You got the candy bars instead." The daughter, who started the push for candy bars, looks at the small, empty wrapper in her hands and back at the tub of ice cream. "But this is so much smaller than that." Mom looks back at the ice cream tub and says, "Oh my goodness, you're right. Seems like maybe you screwed yourself out of a lot of ice cream later in exchange for a bit of chocolate now." She sighs. "Isn't that a shame?" Daughter tries to turn on the frown. "But Mom, can't you just go back and buy it? It's right there." She shakes her head. "No, sweetie, I already paid for the groceries. It's the next gentleman's turn," meaning me. The cashier had already started scanning my groceries. The daughters take one last look at the ice cream and their empty wrappers before turning and running away. Not too far. I think they just wanted to not see the ice cream anymore. As soon as they were off, I burst out laughing. "Now that's a lesson. Way to go, Mom." She smiled back at me. Something tells me it's a lesson they won't soon forget. Because I'm in such a cheerful mood, I say, "You want me to buy that ice cream so they can have it later? It'd be no trouble." She smiles wider and shakes her head. "Nope, if I let you do that, they wouldn't learn their lesson now, would they?" Moral of the story: be careful what you wish for, kids. You just might get it. This mom deserves a parenting award. She didn't yell, didn't lecture, just a master class in letting her kids face the natural consequences of their choices. That's a life lesson they're going to remember next time they try to pull a switcheroo at the store. Also, major props to you for offering to buy the ice cream. It shows you have a kind heart. But Mom was absolutely right. Undoing the lesson would have missed the whole point. And our second story. Corporate screws up, I fix it, and leave the store in total chaos. Before I can explain exactly what I did, I have to explain the system that was being used. I was a stalker at an office supply store, and every morning we received a computer-generated list of items that needed to be taken out of storage and put on the shelf. This list was generated by scanning 1, the number of a particular item that should be on a shelf, and 2, the amount that the item we have in stock versus the amount in storage. So if 10 should fit on the shelf and our system says we have 15 in stock with 10 in storage, list would print saying I need to put 5 out. There's 2 very important things to note with this system. The first is that the only way the system had of grading our completion was by detecting if an item was deleted from the storage inventory. The second is that each store was graded on how closely they followed the list by percentage. If the list said 50 items needed to go out and we managed to get 40 out, we got 80%. Corporate expected 90% compliance daily, so I'd hear from my manager if we didn't hit that. Now comes the fun part. To start, in a twist that was 100% unrelated to this issue, I had just put in my 2 weeks' notice, so I had nothing to lose. Immediately after that, about a month before back-to-school season began, corporate screwed up and registered that all of our back-to-school displays were already out. We hadn't even received those displays or any information about them because it was so early. There was no way they could be out. Suddenly, the system thought we had thousands of extra displays for school supplies like pencils and binders. We'd already received all of that product and it was sitting in storage, so now that the system issue said we had displays, the full list said they needed filled. I explained to my store manager what happened, and she said there's absolutely no way corporate would make that mistake. I must be doing something wrong. I called local stores and spoke with their store managers. All agreed with me and said their list compliance percentages are plummeting. Told my store manager, she repeated the same line. I printed off a list of extremely low compliance percentages in our district and showed it to my manager. She said they must be doing something wrong too. Finally, I had enough of her whining. So for my last 10 or so days there, whenever this list printed saying we needed to fill several hundred items from storage, I just deleted those items from storage. On my second to last day, my store manager gave me a hearty congratulations on solving the issue and told me how much better we're doing than all the other stores. By the time the displays came out for real, I was gone. I was told by my former coworkers that the store was absolute chaos because a few thousand items just didn't exist in our system, and they had to completely go through the entire store's inventory to get it all fixed. Several years later, I still find it hilarious how proud my manager was that I'd solved the issue. That's a DM who cares way too much about the fill report to be harping on it with managers. Unless the store manager hyped that up. You fixed nothing and everything all at once and walked away with a story worth retelling for years. Who knew office supplies could be the backdrop for such beautifully orchestrated chaos? And our last story. Neighbor took down my fence. As a military man, I'm rarely home, and the last thing I want when I return from deployment is drama. Unfortunately, my neighbors, Karen and her husband, seem to have made it their mission to test my patience. They're the kind of people who flaunt their wealth, assume they can buy their way out of anything, and love to toss around legal threats. Karen, in particular, has this air of entitlement that makes every interaction feel like walking into a lion's den. Her husband, being a lawyer, only adds to their confidence in steamrolling anyone who crosses them. We've had our share of conflicts over the years, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened after my most recent 2-week military leave. The day I returned, I stepped into my backyard to inspect my property, as I always do after being away. But something was immediately off. The fence that separated my land from theirs was gone, not damaged, not moved, completely gone, like it never existed. My blood boiled. That fence wasn't just a line in the sand, it was something I had built myself after a lot of hard work. Without it, the clear boundary between our properties was gone. I stormed over to their front door, fists clenched, and knocked harder than I probably should have. Karen answered with her signature smug expression. Before I could say a word, she cut me off. "Oh, I see you noticed the fence," she said with a fake smile. "Don't worry about it, we'll reimburse you for the cost." "Excuse me," I shot back. "That's not just about the money. That fence is on my property. You had no right to tear it down." She gave an exaggerated sigh, clearly annoyed that I wasn't just rolling over. "We needed to take it down for our new project. Relax, we're building a garage and it'll be a much better boundary than your little fence." Before I could get another word in, she slammed the door in my face. Typical Karen behavior. Since I had no time to deal with the mess, they knew I'd be gone again soon for work. I had no choice but to let it sit. But I didn't forget. When I returned a month later, my jaw dropped. Sitting where my fence had been was their brand new garage. Not only was it massive, but it was way too close to my property line. Something felt off, and I decided it was time to get the professionals involved. I hired a surveyor to confirm the property lines. Sure enough, their shiny new garage wasn't just close to the line, it was a full 3 meters over it, sitting squarely on my land. Armed with the surveyor's report, I went back to their house. This time, both Karen and her husband answered the door. Karen had her usual smug look, but her husband looked slightly uneasy. probably because he knew where this was headed. "We need to talk about your garage," I said firmly, holding up the survey. Karen scoffed. "What now? It's just a garage. You're making a fuss over nothing." "It's not nothing when your garage is 3 meters onto my property," I snapped. Her husband stepped in, trying to play the voice of reason. "Look, I'm a lawyer. I know how these things work. It's a small encroachment, and I'm sure we can come to some sort of agreement." "Small encroachment?" I laughed bitterly. "You destroyed my fence without permission, built this monstrosity without consulting me, and now you're squatting on my land. There's no agreement to be made here. Move the garage." Karen exploded. "Do you have any idea how much that garage cost us? We're not tearing it down because you're being petty." "Petty?" I said, stepping closer. "You tore down my fence without asking. You built on my land without permission. If you think this is about being petty, wait until you see me in court." True to their nature, they tried to scare me with legal threats. Karen's husband even had the nerve to send me a letter claiming they had adverse possession of the land now that the garage was there. But they underestimated my determination. I filed a lawsuit armed with the survey and evidence of their blatant disregard for boundaries, both literal and metaphorical. The court was not on their side. The judge ruled that they had 90 days to either move the garage or demolish it entirely. Karen threw a tantrum right there in the courtroom, ranting about how unfair it was and how a stupid fence had ruined their lives. Her husband tried to argue, but the evidence was undeniable. Watching the demolition crew tear down the garage was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. They also had to pay for my legal fees and the cost of replacing my fence, which I made sure was even taller and sturdier this time. Karen still glares at me every time I'm home, but I just smile and wave. Her husband, he keeps his head down, probably realizing he picked the wrong battle. As for me, I learned an important lesson. No matter how much someone tries to intimidate you, stand your ground. Literally, it's always worth it. It's baffling how entitled some people can be. They thought they could rip down a fence, build on someone else's property, and then argue adverse possession like it's a get-out-of-jail-free card? The level of audacity is almost impressive. Almost. OP handled this masterfully, though. Instead of escalating into a shouting match or getting steamrolled by their so-called legal expertise, they calmly gathered evidence, hired a surveyor, and let the court shut them down. That demolition day must have been so sweet to watch. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.